everyone. This is your host, Mae Renfroe, and welcome back to another episode of Thoughtful Thursday. And I have my guest again, Susanne Murphy. She's with me doing, a series on all things grief. And so this is part three of our
Yeah.
four-part series. Sorry. So
hmm
we had talked about, well, her personal journey of loss and grief and kind of just introducing all that to us, and then about uncovering the myths of grief. And so, yeah, Susanna is going to kind of take us from there. And just to also let you know that she is a recovery specialist and works with clients in healing and overcoming their emotional pains. I just wanted to kind of let everyone know again, who you are in
hmm
that way. But so,
hmm
Suzanne, welcome again. And so, yeah, if you can kind of take us uh, in again on what you have to continue this series.
Absolutely, absolutely. First, thank you so much for having me back, Meg. I'm really enjoying discussing this with you, and I'm so expectant that your listeners are going to walk away. They're going to glean some really great information that's going to lead to their own healing and recovery. So I'm excited about the opportunity to share all this. So thank
That's
you.
good. Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah, doing
yeah,
that.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. So, all right. So, yeah. So last week we talked about the myths. And so to do a really quick recap, the six myths that we uncovered are don't feel sad, don't feel bad, which really equals just don't feel. Replace the
Hmm.
loss,
Yeah.
grieve alone, time heals, keep busy, and be strong for others, be strong for others, which again equates to not feeling.
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
so we've got all this misinformation. We have this we have all this really bad advice on what to do with loss, and that leads us to not knowing, we're trying to figure out what to do with our emotional pain, but we're not addressing it at the core issue because we're either not feeling, or we're trying to replace it,
Hmm.
or we're isolating. And so the emotional pain gets stuck. It stays with us. And like I had said, I think in maybe the first episode, that our losses are cumulative and cumulatively negative.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
over the course of time, well, actually, it happens rather quickly, that we begin to act recovered. We begin to act okay. It's so sad that grievers,
Hmm.
right following a loss, we actually are the healthiest people around, because we're doing all the normal and natural things following a loss. We're crying. We want to talk about the loss. We're feeling sad, and it's the people around us who, because again of the lack of information in society, and again them wanting to help, are giving us really bad advice. They're giving us the really bad advice of, either the myths,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
they get into speaking intellectual facts. And so grievers can hear a lot of really unhelpful statements following a loss. I think someone did a study, and I think it's like there's like 144 statements, common statements, that a griever has, like, I think it was like maybe like an 85-90% chance of hearing almost all of them following a loss. And I think it's like only 14 of those statements are actually helpful.
Oh, wow. That's
Yes,
something.
yeah,
That's sad.
yes, it is
Oh,
sad. And so,
yeah.
so we hear a lot, a griever will often hear, I know how you feel, which is impossible.
Yeah.
That's impossible, because every relationship is unique.
Hmm.
And so no one else is in like when my mother died, nobody else was in my relationship with my mom. It was me and my mom. I have two sisters. They each had their own relationship with our mom. It was a shared fact. It was a shared fact
Hmm.
that we all lost our mom. But because I am not in their relationship, I had no idea how my sisters were feeling, just as
Okay.
they had
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea how
Yeah.
I was
Makes sense.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yet we want to comfort other
Yeah.
people. So we say, oh, I know how you feel. Well, that's not possible at all. And it
Yeah. Yeah.
actually
That's right.
shuts the griever down from being heard.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
shuts the griever off from experiencing their own feelings. It actually does not validate the emotional experience that the griever is having when you say, well, I know how you feel. Because oftentimes, then following that, it leads to, you'll be okay,
Yeah.
a quick brush off.
Yeah.
Grievers want to be heard. They want to be heard without fear of being criticized, judged, analyzed, or receiving unsolicited advice. They just want to be heard. And because, again, grief is the least talked about topic in our society, and we don't even call it grief. If
Hmm.
you think about it, well, maybe immediately following a loss, we might be like, well, they're grieving. But honestly, maybe like a month later, we're very quickly going into, well, they're depressed
Mm.
or they're
Okay.
anxious.
Yeah. Yeah. Gets a
Yeah.
new label instead of,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Instead of calling it what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then, once we give it a different label, then we all try to fix it in a different way. You need an antidepressant,
Yeah.
or maybe you need to just work out more. Just get rid of your stress. You're stressed. You're just so stressed. It was so stressful. Your loss was stressful,
Yeah.
which is true, but my heart's broken. I don't need to go work out my abs. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need I need to heal my heart in this deal. And so grievers very quickly will shut down. They'll shut down, they'll stop sharing. And, or, what else they'll hear is, again, like the bad advice of, well, you just need to move on. And you just need to get over it, and you just need to press on, and or pray more, or read your Bible more. And those things are great in and of themselves, but it doesn't help me complete what was emotionally incomplete in my relationship. And that's where the emotional pain sits. And so then the other experience that grievers go through is that the people around them are so uncomfortable with the loss, with talking about
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
death or talking about your grief experience, that they either change the subject or they ignore it
Hmm.
altogether. I, after my divorce, some members of my ex-husband's family had come to our house, our shared home, me and my ex-husband. They came to our house to go with me to watch my older son play one of his college rugby games. And they walked in the door, and I mean, my heart was bleeding, and nobody had been in my house for months. My boys were away at college, my
Hmm.
husband's gone, my family lived 8, 9 hours away. And I was so brokenhearted. I was isolating. So they came over, and I was just so looking forward to being able to have this moment of like, just, I'm grieving, my heart is bleeding. Let's,
Hmm.
before we go to this game, let's take a moment and acknowledge that this
Hmm.
lot, like how empty my house is now.
Hmm.
And instead, and of course, again, I mean nothing, no disrespect against these family members, because they did what society has taught them to do. They came in with big happy faces, smiling. This is going to be so great. Let's go watch the rugby game. And the white elephant in the room was completely ignored.
Hmm.
And that added to my heartbreak, because I just wanted
Hmm.
a moment
Yeah.
to just acknowledge how my home had shifted, how, it went from a full house to just me. I'm all alone now.
Hmm.
And I wanted that heartache to be honored. And it wasn't. And then I noticed over the course of the afternoon, as I'm bleeding on the inside, I could hear the inflection of my voice. I could hear my tone, and I was forcing myself to sound happy when I was nothing but. And when
Hmm.
we When that happens, well, what gets communicated to us, what really unwittingly gets communicated to us, is that we need to act recovered.
Okay.
That we
Yeah.
need, it's not okay to feel sad or bad or upset, and you need to act recovered. And what happens when we do that, May, is we become incongruent. We
Mm.
become, we were created to be loved and to be loving, to be to trust and to be trusting, to be giving, to be joyful. And when we start faking it,
Mhm.
we get out of alignment with ourselves. Our minds and our hearts are not in congruency. And now I'm in conflict with my nature.
Mm. Oh,
And
wow.
yes, and we're all walking around
Yeah.
in conflict. And you know what happens when I'm not whole, when I'm not lined up, that plumb line isn't lined up properly, I can't fully show up in life
Hmm.
because now my head and my heart are in two different places. And so maybe mentally I'm showing up to something, but my heart is completely checked out. My heart is somewhere else. I'm not present. Therefore, I'm not fully, available to experience what's precisely happening in the moment as it's happening. And that's so sad because it robs us
Yeah.
of so much joy. It robs us of so much peace. But if we could just all be brave enough to to discover the losses that we've been trying not to feel, and then go in and be brave enough and vulnerable enough to feel them, what happens is little by little, as we heal, we become congruent.
Yeah.
And then the way we show up in life completely changes. And then that's when we get to live a full life. It's absolutely amazing. But, in the
Mm.
meantime, we have everyone again, you know, unwittingly sending grievers the message that you can't be feeling what you're feeling, you need to act recover. And so I know personally for me, like, so that was one instance where I just was like, oh, I have to act like my life didn't completely, get turned upside down on its head. I better act okay. I better be like happy Susie,
Hmm.
which was, my personality prior to. And then another time I remember acting recovered was the Christmas after Mark died. So fast forward like 2.5 years.
Hmm.
And this was after Mark died. And I remember going over. So by now I'm living in Pennsylvania. And I remember going over, we were heading over to my older sister's home for Christmas Eve. And I was looking forward to being with like my older son. He had flown down from Maine to be with me that Christmas in Pennsylvania. And so I had my mom and my sister and her 4 kids. And so, really looking forward to everyone being together. Thought it was going to be such a great time. And I even put on like this fun Christmas themed dress, to just kind of be fun. I dolled all up. And I mean, I just like I honestly, they just handed out the Oscars the other night, and they give those awards. So I was saying, it's just really sad that the major message that is sent to grievers is don't feel what you're feeling, and we're not going to listen.
Yeah.
There's nobody there to hear you
Oh my
because I
goodness.
don't I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with you, so I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah.
So I'm either going to change the subject or I'm going to ignore the topic completely. So then over time, grievers, well, they'll, just start acting recovered because, I mean, listen, we all want to fit in a sense,
Yeah.
we all want the approval of others. So we act like everything's okay. And all that emotional energy from the loss gets buried. So where does what happens to that emotional energy?
Hmm.
So I want you for a moment to imagine a tea kettle. You've got the water in your tea kettle, you got it sitting on the stove, and you've got the flame turned up to high. Now, over time, as the water boils, The tea kettle does what it's supposed to do. It lets out steam. It starts to whistle to let you know that the water is boiling.
Mhm.
Well, let's imagine we take a cork and we shove it in to the spout
Mhm.
so the steam can't escape. So what's happening to all that pressure? How much pressure do you think is building up inside that tea kettle? And it's looking for a way
Yeah.
to escape. It's looking for a place to basically blow. Well, all that cork represents all that misinformation, all that really bad advice that we have all been taught since childhood on how to process loss. And over time, we look, I mean, it's only common sense that you've got all that pressure building inside of you, all that emotional energy building inside of you, that you're going to look for a source of relief. And that's where what we call our short-term energy relieving behaviors come in. So it's those habits, I like to say it's those habits and hangups that in the moment make us feel better because they make us feel different. It gives
Mhm.
us somewhere to blow off a little steam. I mean, my goodness, we even use that phrase.
Mhm.
I just need
Yeah.
to blow
Yeah.
off a little steam,
Yeah.
So
Ah.
though, yeah, so those can look like food for what I mean,
Mhm.
definitely because we learn when we're very little to self-medicate. Parents are like, here, don't feel bad. Here, have a cookie. So we learn how to self-medicate in a sense. So food is a big one. So people will turn to food. I know personally for me, that was definitely a stirb that I had developed as a child.
Mhm.
I was not allowed to feel anything. I was not allowed to show up any other way but happy. And
Mm.
that, so not only that was communicated in, where just the sadness and the fear of being abused was not allowed to be acknowledged. But at one point, when I was 8 years old, I don't know, I was having a bad day. And my father actually had said to me, you're not allowed to have a bad day because if you have a bad day, there truly is no hope in the world. And so, at 8,
Mm.
I took that
Mm.
on as like, okay, it's my responsibility apparently that if I'm okay, everybody else is going to be okay,
Mhm.
which lends itself to be strong.
Yeah.
So I developed, there was always like cookies and stuff in the house. So I developed this habit of just, when I felt my feelings bubbling over, but I knew what I knew releasing them was considered unacceptable. So
Mhm.
I would just grab a cookie or a brownie or
Mhm.
whatever, a bowl of ice cream or whatever, which eventually turned into an eating disorder.
Okay.
And that in my 30s, I finally like realized, that these habits were not healthy, and went and sought help and recovery for the eating disorder. But that was something that I learned very, very little. And so, we unwittingly do that to our
Mhm.
children. We say, here,
Mhm.
have a cookie. We teach them to self-medicate. And then for me, it stayed with food. But oftentimes, as people grow, get older, it moves into alcohol
Mhm.
or drugs, even prescription drugs.
Mhm.
Or somebody's been on I mean, people being on antidepressant for decades doesn't make sense to me. Like if you have, like, I understand that there are chemical imbalances, and I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about if you have something sad going on and you're trying to medicate it so you're not feeling it, you're only dealing with the symptom. Let's get to the core issue so you can really show up in life and really enjoy life to its fullest. So we've got, so then we have, so, we have drugs, prescription or non-prescription. We've got, uh, even a spouse using sex as a way to receive emotional comfort.
Mhm.
when that's not really what they're, it's a way for them to, again, feel what they're not feeling. We've got fantasy, which is if
Mhm.
you're just always watching TV, binging on Netflix, watching one movie after another, or even getting into books. I had a friend who I was talking with her about this, and she was like, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "My stirb is reading," and it was like educational books.
Mhm.
But she just went from one book to another in order to, to blow off that steam, in order to distract herself
Mhm.
from what she was emotionally experiencing. And so so we have all this, this energy that wants to blow. And so we turn to these stirbs, and they become habits. They become habit over time, that we don't even realize that we're going to this. I once heard a story of a woman who had a stressful job, and every day her habit was to buy a Snickers bar on her way home from work. She would stop at the local convenience store
Mhm.
and buy a Snickers bar. And why? Because it offered a sense of relief.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with these stirbs, is that they seem like they work, but just for the short term.
Mhm.
Because if they really worked, you wouldn't have to repeat them.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the moment, you feel better because you feel different. You've got all this emotional pain boiling up. You your spout is jammed with all the bad information we've been given about how to process grief. So you're looking to blow somewhere. So you grab a drink, or you grab a cookie, or you go shopping,
Mhm.
or you just
Mm.
work harder, or you volunteer for everything in to keep you distracted, and in order to
Mhm.
keep you distracted from what your heart is currently experiencing. And that's the danger with stirbs, because it keeps us from actually healing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it
because you're
keep,
looking for these distractions to feel that you wouldn't need to if your heart was able to what then properly grieve and properly to be able to find the proper healing, right?
yes,
So,
yes,
and is
exactly.
that a short for a long? What is you got stirps?
Yeah,
Yep.
short-term
What was
energy
that?
relieving behaviors. That's
Oh,
what,
okay, okay. That's what
yeah,
it means.
that's
Okay, you
what.
probably said that right when you started talking about it. I just kind of missed it myself. So,
Yeah, no, that's
okay.
okay. No, I'm glad you
So,
asked, because I
yeah.
know that came out of my mouth a lot. A
Hmm.
lot. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, even telling jokes, even becoming like the funny man, can like,
Okay. Yeah.
turn into a stirb. And there's one stirb that, because like even exercising can actually be a stirb, where people, again, they're like, I just need to go, um, again, I'm going to go get this, I'm going to go work this out physically, which our bodies can release endorphins and things like that once we get moving, once we get
Hmm.
exercising. But again, that doesn't address our heart. And the last stir that I really want to hone into for a minute
Hmm.
is anger, because it's a common one, where when people will have an emotional outburst, and it might not even have anything to do with the current situation, but that emotional pain has reached to such pressure, such a height inside of them, that they're looking for a sense of relief, and it comes out in angry outbursts. And I know personally, in my own experience, that really I believe that was the backstory to my child abuse. 100%. I recall one morning, I was a little girl. It was a Saturday morning. I was sitting on the floor watching cartoons, and my dad was behind me, and he was just pacing in a circle, and he was just sighing, and he was just pacing. Obviously, he was very upset about something. And having grown up in an abusive home, you learn, like, you're always on the lookout for,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
is something about to go down.
Yeah.
And I remember being aware that he was back there upset. And I remember thinking, like, I should probably get up and walk away before, like before something happens. But I really wanted to, as a little kid, I also like my rationale was like, but I also really want to watch this thing on TV. So I scooted myself just to create a little more distance. I scooted myself just a little bit closer to the TV. And the next thing I know, my dad kicked me in my back. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, hey, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what did you do that for? And he blamed it on, well, you were sitting too close to the TV. Well, what was his physical abuse for him? That was a stir. That was a stir. He was
Mm-hmm.
behind me, obviously struggling with some big emotional pressure until he let it out with his foot making contact with my back. Now, what I really want to say here is that not that's not always the case, but it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to I want to offer a different view on abusive, angry people. Now, I'm not saying, and I'm not minimizing at all what my father did. Do not get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I am not, I'm not glossing over it. And I'm not saying it was okay. It absolutely was not okay. And I believe he was held accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, I have forgiven him. I've chosen to forgive him, both of my parents, for being abusive. And because forgiving frees me, it's giving up
Yeah.
the forgiveness is giving up the hope of a different or better yesterday.
That's a
So
nice way to put it.
yeah, yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
when you've been through some stuff, and and I really wanted to touch on this for a moment because I know that when I shared my story, I did talk about child abuse as a major loss, and so it's my hope that it's my hope to offer encouragement to other
Mm-hmm.
survivors of child abuse or domestic violence, and maybe it wasn't your parent, but maybe it was a spouse or another family member. And so yeah, it's to my hope is to offer some encouragement. But again, I mean, that I could see, and I know I shared this with you one time when you and I were talking, that I could see, even as a very little girl, I could see that my parents behaved the way that they behaved because they were hurting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You
Because they
mentioned.
were hurting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if they had the tools, if they'd been taught the tools, if somebody acknowledged their pain,
Mm-hmm.
I do believe they would have made different choices. I believe they would not have behaved the way that they
Mm-hmm.
behaved. Again, I'm not saying that abusive people are that their abuse is justified. It is not. Again, I'm not saying that we should gloss over it or just forget about it or yeah, I mean, we all think we can say it's okay when it's not okay. It was nothing but okay. Their behavior, my dad kicking me in my back because he was upset about something was not
Mm-hmm.
okay. But I'm able to see now, I'm able to look back now as an adult and I'm able to say I can see that he was a griever over multiple things. And maybe you have some really angry people that you know in your life. And maybe all that anger is coming out um, from a place of their own brokenheartedness and their own hurt. And let's learn how to be listeners. Let's learn how
Mm-hmm.
to be listeners. And of course, I'm not saying that all
Mm-hmm.
grieving people get into that, but that's been my experience, where I've seen it lend to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it lend to that. I mean, there are cases when that's not the
Yeah.
situation, when the
Yeah.
angry person isn't behaving that way, that they're, or I'm sorry, yeah, I'm trying to say that I've seen it where, yeah, the angry, abusive person isn't like grieving over something or brokenhearted over something. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're, narcissism, abusers, psychopaths, those are real bona fide things. But I just want to present that as an idea that, angry emotional outbursts, because we've all seen it, is a short-term energy relieving behavior. And and in that moment when my dad kicked me, he blew off his steam. He changed the topic himself instead of going from whatever it was he was mentally and emotionally dealing with to pinning it on me sitting too close to the TV.
Mhm.
And then he went on with his day,
Mhm.
you know? So I think that that's a really important perspective
Yeah.
to share with everybody,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That
yeah.
is good to help to kind of understand all of that.
Yeah.
And so what are some things that can really help us in the long run? So those are the things that you end up turning to fix something that you're feeling to let off the
Hmm.
steam.
Hmm.
Can you
Yeah.
share
So
what actually is going to heal that though? So you don't be turning to those different things.
sure. The very first thing is becoming aware of them.
Okay.
Is becoming aware of them. So, like for me, chocolate can still be a starve. So, if I'm like feeling really stressed out about something or overwhelmed about something, there's this habit of just walking into my pantry and grabbing a handful of chocolate chips and eating it instead of allowing myself to just sit in the moment.
Yeah.
I love how the Irish put it. I can't speak Gaelic, but I love how the Irish talk about their feelings. Instead of them saying, I am sad, almost like giving themselves a label, they say, in this moment, sadness is on me. And so if we can recognize two things, number one, recognize I'm feeling something
Yeah.
and I'm about to go eat something or do something so I'm not feeling what I'm feeling. And then I mean, just recognition alone, awareness is so powerful because if you don't know you have an unhelpful habit, you can't break it.
Yeah.
You can't stop it. So start paying attention to, I'm feeling lonely right now. So instead of calling a friend, which would be, reaching out for connection, I'm going to go eat a bowl of ice cream, or I'm going to turn on some TV, or I'm going to get distracted on social media. Recognize it, and then give yourself the space to, to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then what I'll often do is I'll actually talk to my heart.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll say, Heart, what do you need to say right now?
Yeah.
What are you feeling right now? And what do you need to say right now? Because like I said earlier, all of that emotional pain, it lives in all those undelivered communications of an emotional nature. So if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm feeling sad or burdened about something, I will ask my heart, what do you need to say? And as soon as I give my heart the opportunity to share what it needs to say, more like 9 times out of 10, I'm able to fall right back asleep. So yeah.
Mhm.
So those are the two
Oh,
things that I would suggest to start. And then of course, what we're going to be talking about next week is
yeah.
it are the steps that we can take to lead to recovery. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So to kind of
Yeah.
finish up with, so these are the
Yeah.
things that we want to be aware of, that we're not distracting ourselves, that we're allowing ourselves to feel. And then you're going to talk to us about the things that are going to then help to heal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Absolutely.
wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is
Yeah. I'm
so,
really excited about that.
yeah, because that is so good because you can easily turn to these things and almost think that these things are okay and that they're helping, but in the long run, but they're not helping. In fact, they're maybe getting you sometimes addicted to different things, or like you
Hmm.
said, eating disorders, and really causing more trouble in the long run. And then you're still haven't healed in these places. So you um, would it be like putting a band-aid on it, but it's not.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
I
really
mean,
fixing it. Okay, and so we
right.
don't realize some of the things almost sounded good in a way.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah,
Hmm.
volunteerism sounds
Hmm.
fantastic. Really giving it your all at your job. That's great. We want good work ethic, but if you're doing it in order to keep your mind off of your broken heart, to keep your
Yeah,
mind off of what you're feeling, then that's a stumbling block.
yeah.
Then that's a stumbling block and it keeps you stuck. It keeps you stuck. And that's the other thing about like acting recovered is that
Okay.
it can get to the point where you convince yourself you're okay.
But yet you're not. there's
yet
something
you're
you're
not.
not, but you've
Right.
convinced yourself it's okay, and this is just how
Yeah.
I'm going to feel the rest of my life, or right,
Yes.
and that way
Yes.
too.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you kind of like, grievers can kind of resign themselves to the fact, like, well, I'll never be completely joyful again.
yeah,
Which is, oh, that's so heartbreaking
yeah.
to think that, to just give up on ever feeling full joy again. That's just so sad.
Hmm.
And man, I'm here to say that doesn't have to be. That
Hmm.
doesn't have to be, that you can get back to experiencing life at 100%. It is possible. I have lived through so much grief and so much heartache in my life. And I have, I've done the hard work, and I've gone in to do what I needed to do to recover. And every day, I'm not lying when I say every day my life gets more joyful.
Oh, wow.
Every day my life gets more joyful.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's it. I can definitely see it in our conversations. And yeah, and then I'll say, the same for me, and the loss and grief that I have walked through, um, as well. First was my son, and then my dad the next year, and a brother the next year, and just
Oh,
and all the
wow.
things that I did wonder if I would find that joy, like where you'd really feel good about, laugh and not feel guilty, or all these things, and really have joy. And I do. I have joy. So yeah, I
That's
know that's
wonderful.
true. So
That's wonderful.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. All
So, well, I
right.
think we're gonna need to wrap our time up. We're just about out of time
Yeah.
this time, but it's been
Yeah.
great. And thank you again so this was the part three of the
Part three.
four parts. And so we'll, yeah, get to the next week. So next Thursday. And yeah, if you guys haven't seen the first two, I'd recommend you could see the first two
Mhm.
parts. And yeah,
Yeah.
I hope everybody has a great week. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care. I'll see you back
All right.
next week
Thanks,
for
Meg.
the
Bye.
our last partner series.
All right. Bye.